You are listening to Three Kitchens podcast, hosted by Heather Dyer and Aaron Walker. To find our complete catalog of episodes, check out any of your favorite podcast players.
Or our website, threekitchenspodcast.com. Welcome to this issue. It's not an issue. To this episode.
And we have issues.
I was just going to say. We have issues. This is an episode. Three Kitchens podcast is where you are, everyone. You know that we may be having issues.
There might be some slight technical difficulties here.
It's all just with our brain.
Yeah.
I saw a little post on Threads from this podcast that we follow called Funny Medicine podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So it's these two women in the States who, one of them is a doctor and the other one I think is a researcher. And anyway, they present medical information in a fun way.
Right.
And they said, did you know that every 10 years you basically replace your skeleton? You're a whole new you. I have no idea what that means. I have not listened or looked into it, but the first thing I thought is, I hope my new one has better knees. Like, maybe I also need a new cranium. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm hitting
prioritize some things.
I'm hitting another decade, and I would like a new skeleton. Did you get yours at your last?
Oh,
you hit another decade recently too. Did you get a new skeleton?
I feel like there were some defects in their instructions or something because
the download didn't
download. It didn't download properly. I'm still having some issues with connectivity issues.
Oh God, yeah. I'm not holding out hope for that skeleton. I don't know what that means, but maybe if you listen to the Funny Medicine podcast, they'll tell you. I have no idea. Just thought it was interesting.
Oh, if only it was that good, right?
Yeah. Okay, so for this episode, I thought since we recently purchased a little bit of lamb from our farm friends, Chatsworth Farm, we talk about them a lot. They should maybe pay us something. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
They can pay us in meat. I'm good with that too.
Yeah, give us some freebies. No,
they're so awesome kind. They're so good.
And if you're in Alberta, look them up. Maybe they're delivering to a place near you and you can pick up some nice meat. We got a few cuts of lamb this time. And I thought, I've been dying to pull something out of the freezer and cook with it. And I'm like, what should I make? And I'm thinking since St. Patrick's Day is kind of coming up.
It is.
Soonish. I don't know when this episode will be out, but it might be around St. Patrick's Day. So why not? Oh, she's got the calendar.
Oh, it's definitely going to be on just before St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
You got a week. You got a week to get your lamb so that you can do whatever Heather's doing, because I don't know what it is, but she's going to make something great. So
you could also use beef. Okay, if you don't have lamb or you don't like it, and don't turn us off. Don't turn it off just yet. If you're like, lamb, nope. You could also do this with beef. Now, of course, if you don't like beef, well, maybe you don't want to listen. I don't know. Let's hope you stay.
Please hang around.
I thought, what is like a sort of traditional or typical, what I imagine an Irish lamb dish, and I think of stew. And I love a good stew. So I'm going to make an Irish Guinness stew. I've never made stew with Guinness in it.
Oh, it has Guinness in it.
Guinness in it. Yeah. And I've seen this recipe and I thought I'm going to give it a try. It also has bacon and it has potatoes and carrots and herbs. So, I mean, this is a fairly, I think, familiar kind of recipe for many of us.
Yeah.
But with lamb shoulder, I think, is what I've got.
Very good.
So you could also use beef, as I said. And I've never made a lamb stew, actually. Have you?
You've never made a lamb stew?
No, I've made beef stew.
Ugh.
Never made a lamb stew.
Well,
I made that shepherd's pie, you'll remember.
you made the shepherd's
Sort of
pie.
a stew base that you put in,
True.
but it wasn't strictly a stew.
I believe I made a lamb stew last time we had lamb. And anytime that the lamb goes on sale at the grocery store, sometimes the little chops, the lamb chops will go on
Mhm.
sale, and I'll get a couple packages of those because I really like a bone-in meat when I make a stew, just because like you make your own broth while you make your stew. So I usually sear those lamb chops in a hot pot, toss in all of my ingredients, and then add in the water, and then it all just falls apart and falls off, and you get these yummy little bits of lamb and
Mm-hmm.
mm,
And you just pull the bones out before you serve it.
yeah. I modeled this off of an Icelandic lamb stew that
Hmm.
I ate while I traveled around Iceland because it was like the cheapest thing on the menu at every place we went to, and it was a little bit different everywhere you went because it was kind of like that thing that wherever you go, somebody's got their own little way of doing it. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what
Well, I
I.
remember I thought you called it a soup. Maybe I'm thinking of,
Oh, maybe it's more of a soup than it is more of a soup than a stew. Thank you.
yes, that it was an Iceland, because when you said Iceland, I'm like, oh yes, I
Oh,
remember this
yes.
now. It was a soup,
It's a soup.
but
It's a much more thin broth.
a bit more brothy. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really the only difference between a soup and a stew,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This is the thing about soups and stews. Hmm.
Yeah, they're kind of the same. And you might start out with a soup on day one, and then your leftovers are more like a stew because it all
Yes.
kind of soaks up and you lose some of the liquid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two
And
meals in one.
especially if there's potatoes in it, the next
Yeah.
day they be breaking down.
Yeah.
You get stew.
So I'm going to go for stew. We're going to
Okay.
see how this turns out. And normally with a stew, I like to have like a bread. And this time, I think I'm going to do Yorkshire pudding because I
Oh,
love them. It's like one of
I
my
never
favorite.
have them and they
I
are
know,
so fun. Okay,
right?
I've never made them before.
Okay, I have to admit that I've only made them from scratch a couple of times, and I don't remember the last time
Okay.
because you can get that little package that you just mix up and you make the batter and you make them. But I'm going to make them from scratch,
Okay.
and have been thinking, kind of dreaming of them because at Christmas time, my sister
Mm.
made the most beautiful Yorkshire pudding from scratch that were like they were so tall. You know how sometimes they just poof way tall? And they like the ones I've made are always kind of like a little muffin. Like they look
They always look like kind of like
delicious, but
a,
they're so small.
yeah, when I've had them, they've always just been like a hollow muffin cup
Yeah, it
with,
looks like a little cup.
and you just kind of, they crack apart and then they're chewy and yummy and
Put
you put
gravy over
stuff in
them.
it. And yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you see them really poofy, and my sister made these like sky high,
Huh.
beautiful Yorkshire puddings. So I'm going to use the recipe that she sent to me. I asked her for it and just cross my fingers and hope. So I did a little reading about Yorkshire pudding when I
Oh,
was thinking about it, and apparently the recipe originated kind of as we know it in the 1700s.
okay.
I feel like that might be, when you hear about like it first appeared in a cookbook,
Mm. I
usually
feel
it's
like
like
that's when cookbooks started. We started
they were,
recording recipes at that period. So that's
yeah,
kind of like our base when it
it's
comes
like
to that
more
stuff, right?
more common to have seen someone actually write it down, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they weren't, I forget what they were called originally. Now I'm mixing kind of cultures here because the stew is sort of an Irish thing, and I believe Yorkshire pudding is a British, like a English thing. So I know they don't always like each other. So we're coming together. I'm just kidding. Um,
This is good.
the Yorkshire pudding apparently, so what you typically do, from what I know, is you heat the pan If you use like a muffin tin,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get it
yeah.
super hot. Then you put fat, some kind of fat or oil in the bottom of each
Okay.
of the cups. Put your batter in when it's smoking hot, and then you put it in the oven, and that's what kind of gets it like
Oh.
almost crispy on the bottom because of the oil that's in there.
Yeah.
And it, I don't know what makes it poof. It's anyway. I was reading about this sort of original recipe, which
Okay.
they would be like roasting meat on a spit over the fire, right? Like in a big fireplace where they would cook. And then as it's because it's dripping, they'd put the whatever kind of pan they had, they'd mix their batter and they'd put it underneath. They had some sort of way of putting it below the meat so it dripped the
A
fat.
shovel. They just put that tin on a shovel and put it underneath the meat.
I
Sorry.
don't know exactly. They probably had some kind
Yeah.
of, something set up to set it on. And the fat would drip onto the little puddings and they would puff up. And I mean, I'm sure it was delicious.
So
And
first you will
then,
be building an oven.
right, out of bricks. So I guess that's kind of the original recipes were these dripping. They were like dripping buns, basically. They're made with drippings. So my experience has been to use some kind of oil in the tins, but now I'm thinking, when I'm thinking about this, I wonder how much, now this is where I want some input. How much kind of dripping-ish could I get when I sear my lamb to prep it for the stew? Do you think I could get,
How fatty is the
yeah,
piece? I mean, I think it just all depends on what kind of piece you have. If
yeah.
if you have a piece that has a bunch of fat on it, you could cut that fat off and then render it so that you get more drippings specifically for your.
Is rendering just letting it fry kind of until it,
I think it's
is that what
getting,
rendering means?
I think when you render fat, it's getting the oil out of the tissue.
Okay.
Let's go with
I
that.
also, because this recipe has bacon in it,
Well,
I
that's
think
where
there
I
will
was
also be
going.
bacon. And I keep bacon fat. I always
Of
reserve it.
course we
And
do.
I've got it in my freezer. So if nothing else, I can use bacon fat in my Yorkshire pudding pan.
Yeah, and if the stew has bacon in it too, then how come we call so many things pudding that are breads?
This is a
Can you answer that
this is an
question?
English thing. I have no idea.
Okay.
We don't so much
No,
call
it
it that.
didn't make it across the pond to us,
Yeah.
but
Like it's more like a cake. Remember the whole persimmon pudding
well, this was
episode
the
where we
thing. Like,
we were expecting pudding and it was cake?
yeah,
Yeah. So a
cake is a
Yorkshire,
misnomer in this, or pudding is a
yeah.
misnomer in this one. Yeah.
Or we've changed the word pudding to mean the wrong thing. Because let's be
Maybe
real,
Jello scarred us. It was
it didn't
Jello.
originate with us.
Yeah.
But there's also such a thing as like a custard, like a cooked pudding is called
Oh,
pudding.
God. Nope. Can't do it anymore.
So at some point, somebody took the word and changed it. Because I would
Clearly.
imagine the pudding recipe from 1740 something is using the term in the way it was originally intended, I'm guessing, right? The bready
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah. So we're
Okay.
using the wrong word.
Probably.
But we still call these ones pudding. Although if you just called it pudding and didn't put the Yorkshire in front of it, you'd be like, what are you talking about? That's not a pudding.
Nobody would know
Well,
what you're
as
talking about.
soon as you say Yorkshire pudding, we all know what that is. It's
Yeah.
bread.
As a child, I thought it was going to be like pudding, and I was always
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'll eat this. And it was good, but at
Mm.
first it was kind of disappointing to be like, you told me you were passing the pudding. What is this?
Where's the pudding? I like pistachio pudding, please.
Ooh. And I was just at the grocery store. Why didn't you say that then? Then I could have
For
picked it
what?
up as my impulse buy.
What?
Pistachio pudding.
Oh, I had already forgotten. Well,
All right.
next time
Okay.
you're there. Okay, so we're going to have
Well,
Irish lamb stew and
okay.
Yorkshire pudding.
time to, oh, dang, we were supposed to get green on for today, Heather.
Oh, right.
Ooh, hold on a sec.
I completely forgot. I'm looking in my son's closet because I thought he used to have a hat, but he doesn't have it anymore. There used to be. It's not. It's a mess. It's just a mess.
I don't know if this is really that green. It looked greener when it was sitting there. It's like my summer bathrobe, right?
Oh my God. Hang on. I thought there was a leprechaun hat around here. Just let me have a quick.
Oh, okay.
I found it.
Ooh.
Ta-da!
All
I
right.
knew this was here somewhere in his room.
We're new to the visuals here. Give us a break, everybody.
Where'd your robe go?
Yeah. It didn't look green enough.
You left me. Okay, I'll take it.
You're bringing all the festivity with your costume change.
It is my recipe, so I can do it.
Okay, awesome. You get to own
How's
it.
it look? Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Now,
Okay.
now that we're dressed, or I'm
We've got our
dressed.
visuals in place.
Anybody who's actually watching, we appreciate that you care to watch
Oh
us
my
sit and
gosh.
talk.
Yeah.
And there's not even cooking to look at. Let's get in the zone. All right, we're talking about lamb stew made with
Yes.
Guinness. Wow.
Right.
Now let's just say if you're familiar with stew, there's nothing different really about the method for making this. If you've made a stew, you can make
Yeah.
this one. So I find getting everything ready is like probably the most work of this kind of recipe. It's just like chopping stuff up, cutting up all your meat if you're starting with a roast and cutting it into pieces, which I did. Unless you buy it. Sometimes you can buy stew meat already cut up, which is nice.
It is, but if you're looking to save on your meat purchase, buy a roast and chop it up and maybe freeze 2 portions of it or something because you're definitely paying more per pound for somebody to chop up that meat and put it into the stew meat package. So that would be that's my tip of the
That's
morning.
true. Good point.
So
Okay. So you are going to begin with your large stock pot. This recipe makes a lot of stew, quite a big pot of stew. So get your big pot and heat some oil on medium-high heat and sprinkle your lamb that you've now cubed and cut up with salt and pepper
okay.
and put it in and move it around to just lightly brown it.
Okay.
I meant to do a little search of the proper sort of language around why we brown the meat before we put it into something like this, and I forgot again, but I believe it helps bring out the flavor of it. Do you remember why we brown meat before we put it into something like stew or soup?
I think it helps seal the meat, so any moisture that's in it kind of gets sealed in so it doesn't all just come out as you're cooking. And it's the browning that like caramelizes and adds flavor. So they say anytime you brown meat that you don't want to overcrowd your pot because you want it to get nice and dark on each of the sides at a high heat. Flip it, and then there's all those little brown bits. And they're always saying deglaze that pan with whatever liquid, preferably an alcohol, and it'll get that
Something
flavor
acidic,
going.
is that what the
Something
alcohol kind
I
of
don't,
does?
I don't know, but often it's like deglaze the pan with your wine or your sherry or what
Yeah.
have you.
Well, basically, this is how we're going to start this recipe. We're gonna brown the lamb and take it out, set it to the side, turn your heat down a little bit to medium, and now you're going to cook bacon because this stew also has a whole pound of bacon. So you had 2 pounds of lamb to
Is
start
it a
with. Now
stew
we
if
got,
it doesn't also have bacon in it? This is, yeah.
I don't know that I've always put bacon into beef stew.
Oh,
I
no,
think if I've
but
got
that's
it, I'll
what,
put it in, but if I don't,
yeah. That's when you've upped your stew game, is when you
Ah,
get when you put the bacon in there, then it's like, oh,
Extra good.
extra.
Okay, so you're gonna render off the fat and kind of crisp your bacon a little bit
Okay.
and take that out of the pot now. And it says here in the recipe, measure the bacon fat that is rendered. If you don't have a quarter cup, add enough oil to make the quarter cup and put that
Oh,
back into the pot. Well, to me, I felt like, okay, now I'm gonna pour all the bacon fat out. I'm gonna measure it. I'm gonna see if I got, you know what? I just sort of eyeballed it. And I had, to my eyes, more
hmm,
than a quarter cup of bacon fat in my pot. So I took a little spoon. I spooned out probably a quarter cup out of there and I set it
oh,
aside because I wanted to use it for my Yorkshire pudding.
mm,
So I set that
yes.
aside and I still had lots of bacon fat. I think a pound of bacon, unless I had particularly fatty bacon, I would imagine a pound of bacon produces more than a quarter cup of fat
I would guess.
more most of the time, I would think.
Hmm.
Anyway, I did not add any oil, but you could if you maybe had real lean bacon and you didn't have enough fat. All right, you're going to whisk in some flour to make a roux. If you're familiar with a French term, the roux, and you're just going to whisk and whisk and whisk, keep that moving until it's a nice light brown color.
Mm,
Could
mhm.
take you 10 minutes. So if you feel like this isn't doing anything, keep going.
And that's the most important part in making a roux so that your flour doesn't taste starchy. Like when you
Mhm.
add the liquid to it, it's all about cooking that flour in the high heat before you add in your liquid.
Yeah, you want the
That's the
flour and the
key.
fat
Yeah.
to fully cook. You want that flour cooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is important.
That's what
So
I've learned through making roux.
and it takes a little bit longer than I always think it should.
Mm,
I'm
mhm.
like, it just kind of looks like whatever, and then it turns brown. You're like, oh yeah, there
You're
it
like,
is.
ah, hello.
Hi. Okay, now we're going to deglaze with
Right.
a full bottle. I had one of those large cans of
Okay.
Guinness, um, and scrape it all around, get all the bits, make sure that's all mixed together, and then put in beef stock. All the measurements and everything will be in the recipe.
Okay.
So if you want to know the play by play, you can go read it in the recipe. All right, now you've got some fresh herbs, which were, let me
Hmm.
just go back up to remind myself.
For sure there was rosemary in there.
Yeah, because some of them get loose and then you get them in your between your teeth
That's okay.
sometimes.
You
Okay,
just chew on them a little bit. Mm, mm,
I just fish them
mm.
out,
Oh.
honestly. 3 fresh rosemary sprigs, 10 fresh thyme sprigs,
Ooh.
3 fresh sage sprigs. It's like a real tongue twister. And you're going to tie those together in a nice little bundle with some kitchen twine.
Yeah.
You're going to toss that into your pot at this point. And
Now, if you didn't,
no, sorry, you're
oh,
not tossing that in yet. Sorry. Okay, Bracket, we can edit that a little bit.
sorry. Now, if you didn't have fresh, what would you do? What do you usually do when you have to add dry? Because I always have dry on hand, not necessarily fresh. How do you kind of equate, or what's your way of equating fresh to dry and the measurements you use?
Well, you know my style.
Oh, my
Just
style is
toss some
very
in.
haphazard.
Yeah, just toss them in. But
Okay.
make sure it's like, I would say make sure then it's ground
Hmm.
and not, so you don't have like what we were just talking about, the big rosemary
Yeah.
leaves. Like
Yeah.
I think you definitely want it to be more fine. And I
Hmm.
think, don't they say that you need less of that than,
So I make and I have no idea where this comes from. I've invented this, so trademarking it right here. For
ooh,
every time it says one sprig and I don't have a sprig, I use a teaspoon. So I would do like a teaspoon of rosemary and 2 teaspoons of thyme and a teaspoon of sage. And I have no idea if that's correct or not, but that's my general rule. So apparently I'm much more rule structured than yours.
Well, I had a feeling you might, and that's why you were asking, because I just would toss some in there.
You never know. Sometimes you surprise me.
I especially bought fresh for this recipe because I didn't want to be that person who didn't know how to I didn't want to say, just toss some herbs into your pot, even though everyone listening knows that's how I cook.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with it either. I'll stand by that.
No, no.
All right, so you've got your roux, you've got your herbs ready to go, set aside,
Okay.
and now you have chopped onions and carrots. Chop it ahead of time. Don't wait until your roux is sitting in the pot, and now you got to quickly chop some vegetables.
Do not
right?
wait until your flour's browning, because then you're going to be doing the oh
Shit.
oh fuck oh fuck oh fuck oh fuck off the stove, off the heat, everything stopped. No, don't do that.
You might have to redo it, and then you miss out on all that fat and everything that you.
That's a sad moment. Chop your veggies
Yeah.
first.
Do the mise en place, as they say. Have all your things chopped, ready. I did ahead of time. I did all my veggies, had my herbs tied, everything measured out, sitting. I had my broth ready to go. I had everything ready. Because I have this thing.
I love
of
doing
times.
that.
Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
It's very pleasing.
It is satisfying to have it just like, look, oh, here, I need that. Here it is.
It feels like you're Martha Stewart. You're like, and now my quarter cup of flour. And you just pick it up and put it in. You're not like, open up your
no,
flour
where's
tin
the
and find
flour?
out the flour tin's empty and you're taking out the big giant bag. And yeah, no, you are Martha Stewart when you do it that way. Feels so good.
Yes.
Okay.
And who doesn't want to be Martha Stewart? I mean, okay.
We'd be good friends with Snoop Dogg too, right?
Totally. Totally. Uh, I mean, for as much as we know of them, we may meet them in person and be like, no thanks. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Onions, carrots, and tomato paste you're going to be putting in at this point.
Okay.
Cook that down until the onions start to soften. Then you're adding some minced garlic, stirring that around. Now it says here too, if you prefer more crisp carrots when your stew is finished, wait and add them in at the end with the potatoes.
Oh, okay.
I added them in earlier because I paused and I thought to myself, how do I prefer the carrots in my stew? And I realized I don't have a preference. It didn't bother me if the carrots were soft.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you?
I thought they were fantastic. I like when I have a stew, I kind of want things to be soft and kind of fall apart as I'm eating it. Like I don't want to have to put a lot of work into things.
And I think you want those carrots to really have a chance to soak up all the
That too.
flavors, right? I can see why you add the potatoes later because
Yes.
they cook faster and you don't really want them to turn to mush.
I was
You
gonna
want a
say they
potato.
don't soften; they turn into mash.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're at the point, let's see. We put in the oh my God, my thing skipped. Okay, we put in our
wonderful.
garlic.
Okay, yes.
And now we are putting in the beef stock and the lamb and the bacon goes back in and the little bundle of herbs and some salt and 2 bay leaves as well.
Okay.
Now
So just to
Okay.
clarify in my mind,
yes, you will need to do that because I'm always here and there when I'm talking about it.
so we browned our meat, we made our roux, we added in our Guinness, and it made a nice little creamy sauce. And then we put our onions in and carrots at that point. Okay, very cool.
Yes.
Continue.
I'm sure you could, if you preferred, you could hold the Guinness and add it in with your stock.
Oh, I don't really, no
I don't know.
preference. I'm just making sure that I understand. That's all.
Yeah, I'm just saying you probably couldn't go wrong switching that order up a bit. I don't
At the
think
end
it's
of the
a big
day,
difference.
it's
Yeah.
a stew. It's a pot.
Exactly.
Oh, everything, and it's
Meat
going
and
to taste
vegetables.
delicious.
Yes, Okay. So at this point, you're going to let it cook and bring the liquid to a boil.
Okay.
Cover and turn the heat down to a simmer and let it simmer for about an hour, stirring occasionally,
Okay.
checking that it's not stuck to the bottom.
Right.
After that hour is when you add in your potatoes and
Okay.
your carrots if you wanted more crunchy carrots, excuse me, and barley. You're putting in
Mm.
hulled barley into this stew.
I love barley in a stew.
Mmm, so good.
So good.
Bring it back to a boil again and then reduce to a simmer again and let the potatoes and the barley cook for about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Take out your bay leaves and your big hunk of herbs and you're done. Taste. See if you
Yeah.
want to add any different salt, pepper,
I was gonna
other
say
herbs.
that's pretty simple, isn't it?
It's a simple stew. And I think what brings out the flavor is the lamb. Like it's a slightly different flavor than making a beef stew. And maybe
Oh,
the Guinness. I don't
and the
know.
Guinness.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know nothing about Guinness,
I know I don't either. That's why I
but
was like, could we
I
taste
knew it
it?
was in there,
Oh, okay.
and I have no way of backing up that statement, so we'll just leave
Well,
it
you're
at
right.
that.
It is in there.
I know. But like I can just taste that. I can
Mm.
taste that like brewed,
Yeasty, like a little bit of
fermented
yeah,
kind of
fermented.
grain flavor. Like that, yeah, that flavor's in there. You can taste it 100%.
Mm. Yeah,
That's what sets
that's true.
this apart, I really think. Like lamb in stews is all good and fine, but that Guinness in there really makes it so much more complex. I really, yay.
Mm. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, the whole thing. And it makes such a huge pot that
Oh, that's the
if
best
you want to
part.
make it and put some of it in the freezer for later, you could pull it back out and probably when you reheat, add a bit more broth or even
Yep,
water
yep,
to loosen it up, get a bit more liquid into it. Oh, it'd be so good.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have any left to freeze because we ate and you ate
I can
and
see that.
we ate and ate and ate a lot. You just finished it just before we
I
started recording.
I split my serving into two because as soon as I opened it up and smelled it, I was like, "Oh, I can't eat this all at once. I'm gonna need two days of this wonderfulness in my life."
Well,
It's a
it's very
gooder.
hearty. It's
Mm.
like there's a lot. Oh, I forgot that I also added mushrooms in there. I had to
I
mention
was
that
so
because they're not
excited
in the
about the
recipe.
mushrooms that you put in there too. I was like, "Oh, mushrooms is not a typical stew item." Were they canned or just whole mushrooms?
Whole mushrooms that I just chopped
Yeah,
big
and what
enough.
stage did you add them in at? The potato
Oh,
stage or the onion stage?
when did I throw them in there?
Summon those
Put them in with
memories.
the carrots. With the
Okay,
carrots.
so onion at the
Because
beginning.
I figured
Yeah,
that mushrooms can cook a long time and
they
they'll just
can.
keep sucking up all the good flavor. So,
Yeah,
yeah. And I
very
kept my
good.
pieces large because I have a child who doesn't like mushrooms and I want him to be able to easily avoid them
There you go.
and not be like, pick, pick, pick.
No,
Just
having
don't put
those
them in your
nice
bowl.
big slices in there, I love mushrooms in this. That was a really good addition.
I
Five
love
stars.
mushrooms in stew.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even put canned mushrooms into
I'm
stew.
guilty of putting canned mushrooms into my chili
I like that too.
just because they are a certain shape and size that I associate with chili.
There's something about a canned mushroom. It gets so weird. It is kind of weird, right?
No,
And you
they're
wouldn't eat them,
strange.
yeah, you wouldn't eat them on their own, or you wouldn't eat them really with almost anything else.
No. And they've changed
Yeah.
completely in everything. They don't look
No.
like a like a mushroom that you've gotten off the farm. They do
Yeah.
not have the texture of a mushroom that you have picked. They do not
Nope.
have only their shape and the fact that they're called a mushroom. But yeah, they go in chili.
Yeah. I remember it was on one of those cooking competition shows on Netflix,
Mm.
and I can't remember which one it was. Oh, it was an Iron Chef, one of the Iron
Oh,
Chef
okay,
more
yeah.
recent ones. And there's that one judge or host. There's the two guy, Alton Brown and the woman. I can't remember the woman's
Mm.
name at the moment. Do you know who I'm talking about? She's always with the Alton Brown guy.
I haven't watched it for a while, so I'll take your
Okay.
word on it.
Well, she was like, "Oh, what are they putting?" When they go, "What are they putting in there?" And they wander over and they go,
Yeah.
"What's that you've got there?" And this person was putting canned mushrooms into something, and she was like, "What? What now?" Like she'd never even heard of a canned mushroom. She was kind of put off by it. She was like, "I don't. Oh, what?" And she tried one and just
Oh,
and
that's a
maybe
bad
even the
choice.
other guy, maybe the two of them together were like, never heard of this thing. And they tried them and they were standing there like, that doesn't even taste like a mushroom. Like they weren't even really trying to be polite about it. They were just like, that's gross. What are you doing?
Yeah,
And
I
the
don't
chef was like, don't worry. Don't worry
trust me
about
on
it.
this one.
Yeah, trust me. And I'm sure it was good.
Yeah.
Because they're weird. They are weird.
They're very strange when they come out of a can. But yes,
Yeah.
they qualify for chili every time in my house.
They work somehow.
Somehow.
That's like one of the only ways I would eat mushrooms as a kid, too.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't like fresh mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
No, but my kid doesn't eat them no matter what.
Well,
But that's beside the point. Okay, now we must talk quickly, at least, about Yorkshire pudding because that was
yeah.
the other thing that I made to go with our stew.
I thought they turned out great. Even though I got them a day late and had to reheat them, they still
Did
did
they reheat
wonderful.
okay?
Yeah.
Well,
You
that's
know,
good.
I've learned this if your bread is a little bit dry or you need to reheat it and you want it to be like soft and fluffy, if you just kind of quickly put it under the tap and get it wet and then toss it in. I know it sounds weird. You're like, ew, don't do this with like your loaf of plumber's
Hmm.
bread, but home baked strong bread. So like sometimes I do this with waffles or croissants or Yorkshire puddings or buns. You just quickly run them under the water and toss them into the toaster oven and let them toast and the water like steams the bun again or the pudding.
Oh,
And yeah, you end up with like it tastes like fresh baked
well,
croissant or
that's good.
whatever. So I know it sounds very strange. Don't go and put Wonder Bread under your tap. You'll be like a raccoon putting cotton
Yeah.
candy in water and wondering what happened to it.
I never thought about that.
Oh,
Um,
you haven't seen that video?
no, I
Oh,
don't know what you're
okay. I know
talking
this
about.
is a complete
Oh,
aside, but there is a raccoon who steals a kid's cotton candy at the zoo and then he drops it or something. He puts it down and there's like a puddle or it's water and it just disappears. And then he's sitting there like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And he's like going through the water. Like, how did I had this big thing of blue and it's
oh, poor
priceless.
guy. Plus, raccoons wash their food before they eat it. He would have probably taken
Maybe
it to
that's
a
why he was
puddle
at the
and
puddle.
like tried to
Bad
wash it.
choices. See? See what
Yeah.
hygiene gets you, Mr. Raccoon?
Live and learn,
Okay.
Rocky
So
raccoon.
these
Little
little
trash panda, quit stealing kids' candy.
well, I mean that's karma. Right in action, right there.
Yeah, that's instant karma. Wow, he
Hmm.
didn't even have to wait for it. That kid's probably like, take that, sucker. That's what you get. That's what my kids used to always say. That's what you get. Okay. All right.
So
So
back to puddings.
the puddings, I didn't feel like they puffed. I had higher hopes. Get it?
Ah,
Higher hopes for my puddings to rise bigger. They did not.
hmm.
I used that rendered bacon fat
Oh
in the bottom
yeah.
of my tin. I got it nice and hot. I got the oil hot. I divided my batter up evenly. I put it in the oven and I was like, oh, well, I mean, they came out much like Yorkshire pudding always turns out for me,
Well,
and
they
I don't think it's bad. They taste good,
yeah.
but I wanted them to get bigger.
I kind of like when they're little collapsed
Little
pots.
cup. They're like a little
Be-
cup, kind of.
yeah, it's like a hollowed out little muffin,
Hmm.
and you put your little scoop of soup in there, and
Yeah.
I'm miming scooping soup and eating the muffin because it's
Yes.
delicious that way. And then
Hmm.
you use it to scrape out. Yeah, I don't know. Good
I
in my
just wanted
books.
to see them get bigger. So
Hmm.
essentially, Yorkshire pudding, what I've read
Ah,
is it's like equal amounts egg, milk, flour.
okay.
And is there, I think that's it. Hang on. Let me double check. Yep. Oh, and oil. But the oil is for the pan, right? So if you are thinking of your recipe, you're putting the oil in the bottom of the pan. Remember that part?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But your batter is equal parts egg, plain, all purpose flour, and
Okay.
milk.
So how
So,
did you
however,
determine the volume of your egg? Because
yeah,
we've gone there before, so why don't we bring that up?
I know. So I tried weighing
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
because I started with 100 grams of flour, 100 mils of milk. I don't know if that's exactly equal, but it looked equal-ish in my measuring cup. And then I did, I think it was two large eggs.
Okay. Because I was
Two.
gonna say, like, is your ratio weight or volume or okay.
Well, you know, I'm no scientist. I can hardly do math. So I was like, well, and I have seen, so I've watched some videos and I've seen some ladies who have like a teacup and they do a cup, crack a crack cup. Like
Okay.
literally, it's like we fill the same vessel.
Okay. So as
Oh,
long as the volume of the stuff is the same.
I
Okay.
guess.
Okay. Nope.
I'm certainly no authority here.
No,
So
I think that sounds good.
I welcome listeners who have mastered the Yorkshire pudding
Well,
to
it's just
give us
always
some
that.
comments.
I mean, I think you can go both ways. I'm sure there's like weight measurements that you could base this off of because bakers love, we know baking and scales are good friends. And so that's why I was curious about your ratio. But if it's a volume ratio, that also works really good too. Because if you know what those are, whether you're making 12 Yorkshire puddings or enough for, a small
Yeah.
army, you know your ratios and and that seems like a sensible one that's been passed on through many ages is one that's, like you said, like a physical teacup.
You
Then
have
it doesn't
some
matter
sort
what
of
you
cup.
have,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're evening it out.
And it doesn't
So,
matter then if some of your eggs are bigger than other eggs. You're just cracking eggs until you've got enough volume, I guess. I mean,
that sounds like a solid old-timey recipe. I like it. I'm good. I'll take it.
and for the oil, you want enough oil to kind of fill the bottom
Okay.
of each little tin, like just enough. It's kind of like a teaspoon-ish.
Okay.
I didn't measure, but pour it until it kind of spreads enough to cover the whole bottom of the muffin tin.
Cool.
So, you know, I don't know that well, I do know that I've not mastered the Yorkshire pudding, but I do think it goes great with a lamb stew.
I think it went fantastic with the stew. I don't think I mean, you made a batter, you baked it in the tins. You didn't have to like scrape them out with a fork because they stuck and
No,
you're crying and like I think it's perfectly perfectly good, right homeable Yorkshire puddings.
I saw a photo not long ago where someone was holding two puddings, one in each hand, literally ginormous. Like they must have made them in a cast iron skillet or something. Like they were so big. It's like, how do you get that to
Yeah,
happen?
well, that's not functional.
Function.
Nobody can use a pudding that big.
You
Come
cut it up
on.
or rip it apart, put it in the middle of the table, and everybody rip chunks off it and dip them in their stew.
I don't need more
Huh?
reasons for my kids to be fighting with each other about who got how much. You
Oh,
each get your muffin tin of pudding and you zip it and eat your food.
I guess.
No tearing contests over your giant Yorkshire puddings.
Okay.
I
I
guess
thought it
that's
looked kind of
fun,
fun.
but like practically wise, it's much more practical to make them in the little muffin tins and have them at the table like they were. So
I suppose that's true. Easier to reheat later too when you need to like just toss it under the sink, under the tap. And then how do you put that whole big thing under the tap and then put it in the oven to
to
warm it
dip
up?
in your dishwater, shake it off. No, no,
No,
don't do that.
no.
Not recommended.
Okay. Well, I'm
Delicious.
glad that you like the stew. I did too.
Oh,
I'm going to give
yes.
it out of the 5 Heather Noggins. Maybe I'll have to take a new photo with my
You're
hat
gonna
on.
have to put that hat in there.
Yeah. Uh, how many should I give it? Gonna give it a I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Good. Go make stew.
May the luck of the Irish be with you. I don't know. What do you say for
It's St. Patrick's Day coming up.
And now for the fine print. Links to recipes and other things we talked about in this episode can be found in the show notes or on our website, www.threekitchenspodcast.com. Come say hello on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. We'd love to connect. And if you enjoy the show, pass it on. Word of mouth is the #1 way people learn about new podcasts. Thank you so much for listening.